I can genuinely see this becoming a holy grail foundation for me. It just has that one fatal flaw. I am back with another foundation review, and today's contender is seriously spendy, so I am expecting greatness. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Foundation. So there is a first impressions portion of this video, but I actually go on to test this foundation for 2 whole weeks. So make sure that you stick around till the end for my final verdict. So for a bit of context, the Pat McGrath Labs website claims that this has a sheer to medium coverage, hydrating, smoothing, long-wearing foundation that comes in 36 shades with a variety of undertones. And I feel so incredibly fortunate that I actually received a PR package from the Pat McGrath team. Thank you so much. I'm not sure that I am worthy, but thank you very much. The shades that I received weren't quite right, so I went on to purchase the shade Light 7, which is described as light with yellow undertones. And this is actually a super close match for my skin tone. Hallelujah! I'm going to leave more information about my skin tone in the description box. I also swatched the shade Light 7 against some other different brands of foundation that you might be familiar with, and hopefully this helps you with your purchasing decisions and answers some of the shade questions that I received. So yes, boom, on to the first impressions. All right, so I have cleansed my face and I've moisturized. I do have the Pat McGrath primer here, but I will not be using that today because I really want to see how this foundation performs alone. But I will test this and update you in the final segment of this video. Oh, you're so pretty. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Foundation in the shade Light 7. The bottle is glass and it has a pump, which is great. I'm going to give it a really good shake. And the consistency, quite a bit thinner than I was expecting it to be. And I have my beauty blender here ready because this is my favorite foundation tool of choice. I am a little bit concerned that this is just going to eat up all the product, but let's start here. I'm going to apply this to the right-hand side of my face first so we can get a bit of a half-half action. I recently learned that Pat McGrath was the one that pioneered one of my favorite foundation formulas of all time, Armani Luminous Silk. And so I think I was kind of going into this expecting this foundation to be somewhat similar, but I'm not getting that feeling. So that's half of my face done there. A light layer on this half of my face, and I would say that this coverage is sheer. Much sheerer than I was anticipating, much sheerer than Luminous Silk. So let me see if maybe I can build a little bit of coverage on these areas where I got some redness. I've applied another light layer on those central portions of my face, but I don't really feel like I'm getting that much more coverage. So I'm gonna say at this stage, this foundation doesn't feel terribly buildable. I think it's meant to be worn quite sheer. On the other side of my face, I'm actually going to try my fingers and maybe that way I can build a little bit of coverage. We'll see. Oh, no. Why am I like this? Fingers on this side. Hi, Mummy.
Hey, pretty.
Hi, pretty. I'm just filming at the moment. Can I give you a ring back? In terms of the smell, I can't really actually smell anything except maybe like the faint scent of alcohol. This foundation does have alcohol in the ingredient list, and I know that a lot of people feel quite strongly about that. I feel like it would be a bit hypocritical of me to begrudge it here because so many of my favorite formulas have alcohol, but you know, it's good to know. So that was an interesting experiment. I would say that I have the same amount of coverage on both sides, but the side where I used my fingers, I used about half as much product and it blended really easily. So this foundation, I would say, is a medium coverage at most. At most. It didn't really want to build on itself. So when you think of foundations like your NARS Sheer Glow, your Armani Luminous Silk, I would classify those as medium plus coverage foundations. Whereas this one, I would say, is a true sheer to medium. So just keep that in mind. Hey, this color's pretty good. The finish, I would say, is maybe a satin, slightly leaning on dewy. And when I touch my face, it is still a little bit tacky. Now that I'm looking really closely in a mirror, I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, but guys, I think I might be in love. I wouldn't say this formula is necessarily smoothing. Like I've got this kind of little area on my cheek here, which I'm not sure if it's like congestion or a rash. Welcome to my life. I wake up every morning, I look in the mirror and I say, pimple or rash? And it's not smoothing over those areas, but it's definitely not emphasizing it. It's like this foundation has taken on the texture of my skin, and I think that's what makes it look so incredibly skin-like. Got a tiny bit of settling around the crevice of my nose, but that's standard. I've just accepted that's going to happen with all makeup. But wow. These are the kind of foundations that get me really excited because I want perfect skin that looks like skin. Is that too much to ask for? I don't think so. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the rest of my makeup, come back in a few hours to see where we stand. BRB. Check-in number 1. It has been 5 hours since application and I encountered my first little challenge when I went to finish off the rest of my makeup. I applied my concealer, went to blend it out, and then I noticed that my foundation was sort of lifting as I was blending. So I went back in with a bit of foundation to try to patch it up. No, that didn't work. It continued to lift. But otherwise, my makeup applied well. I've got a little bit of bronzer. I was quite cognizant of the fact that this foundation never set. It's still very tacky, and so as I was applying my bronzer, I was quite careful, but I think it blended out rather nicely. The only thing that I'm really noticing is that I'm getting just a bit of settling around that crevice, deep crevice of the nose, a little bit in my smile lines here, but I'm probably being a bit nitpicky. My skin type, I would say, is normal to dry, but I do get a little bit of a sheen down the T-zone as the day progresses, and I don't think that I'm looking particularly shiny. Oh, I forgot to mention that I actually didn't powder any part of my face. I only powdered this part of the under eyes because I really wanted to see, would it get oily, would it shift, would it fade? But I think that's looking, longevity-wise, pretty good. And I'm very excited to see where this goes, so I will check back again in a few more hours to report back. Hello, it's me, I'm back. It is now 9 hours after I applied the Pat McGrath foundation. I did some work, I got a migraine, I almost set myself on fire. It was a lot happened today. But foundation-wise, look, I'm definitely looking a bit sheeny down the T-zone at this stage, and it is starting to look a little bit worn in those areas where it always kind of wears away for me, which is around the crevice of my nose. I can see a little bit of kind of redness peeking through. Also getting a little bit iffy, let me say, around the mouth and chin. But honestly, if this were a regular night and I wanted to head out, I would just give this a blot, put on a little bit of concealer, and I would be totally happy to catch up with friends looking like this. I think it wore really well. That's what I'm trying to get at. So over the next week or so, I'm going to test this with different application tools and different primers, give it a really great, rigorous testing, and then I can come back and report my findings. I will see you then. I'm back. It has been almost 2 weeks since we last spoke, and I have been wearing the Pat McGrath foundation pretty much every day since. And girlfriend, I have opinions. Let me tell you about some of the testing that I did with this foundation. I wore it in a mini photo shoot that I did recently with lots of flash, and determined that there was no flashback at all, which is great in case you too have a mini photo shoot coming or a wedding or something like that. I wore this foundation to the gym. I want to point out that I am not that person who goes to the gym and looks cute. Maybe one day, not today. When I go to the gym, I look gross. I'm going to insert a photo of my post-gym face here. The sweat just sort of rolled straight off my face, and the foundation was mostly intact. So you know what? I'm gonna call it sweat-proof. Tools. I tested quite a few tools with this foundation, including the Pat McGrath Labs foundation brush that was launched at the same time as the foundation, and the outcome, really beautiful, so skin-like, so sheer. Like so sheer that I kind of find myself asking what's the point. But disclaimer here, I find that to be true of most dense foundation brushes. On my face at least, they just sheer everything out to the max. You guys saw me use a beauty blender in the initial application, and the beauty blender does the job. But ultimately, my favorite application technique was patting it in with my fingers. I felt like that really helped melt the product into the skin, and the product it became one with my skin. I tried a whole bunch of different primers. The Hourglass Veil and the Pat McGrath Foundation meshed together really beautifully. This combo was a little bit more smoothing on your pores and your texture. Obviously, it would only be right to test the Pat McGrath Foundation with the designated Pat McGrath primer. This primer it's smoothing, but it's got a little bit of a grippy texture, that almost rubberized finish. And I found that I experienced less lifting when I used this primer, although I did find that throughout the day, it looked a little bit more makeup-y. The too long didn't read version, my favorite application technique for this Pat McGrath foundation was to first apply a very light layer of the Dermalogica Skin Hydrating Mask or your favorite moisturizing hydrating primer. This just happens to be my favorite right now. Then I would apply my under eye concealer before my foundation. And then I would take a pump of the Pat McGrath foundation and pat it into the skin quickly with fingers. If I fiddled too much, or if I tried to go back and add a little bit of extra coverage or do a second layer, it would lift. But once I got that routine down pat, it was like the heavens opened up. Adrian and I like to play this game. Well, I mean, I like to play this game. I'm sure Adrian just tolerates it. The game is called Is Karima Wearing Foundation? And he'll get up real close and inspect my skin. He consistently guessed that I was not wearing foundation when I was. Out of 5, I've thought about this at length. Out of 5, I would give this foundation a score of 4.5. I can genuinely see this becoming a holy grail foundation for me. It just has that one fatal flaw, and that's the lifting. Lifting when I go to build coverage, lifting as you blend out your concealer, lifting if you go to apply a cream blush. And I've developed methods to mitigate this, and the foundation wows me enough that I can justify that trial and error. But there's no doubt about it, I would classify it as kind of a finicky formula. And I know that not everyone wants to work that hard, and I totally get it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Karima's novel on the Pat McGrath Foundation. Welcome to the channel where you get all of the convoluted content. If you have tried this foundation, I would love to know in the comment section, what were your experiences and also what is your skin type? That way everyone can go down and have a read and be better informed. Also in the comment section, I would love for you to give me suggestions. What foundations would you like me to review next? I do have my eye on that Fenty Hydrating Foundation. I heard people online saying that it was too dewy, and I thought, right up my alley. Come say hello to me on Instagram at Karima McKimmie. Over there I do PR unboxings and impromptu giveaways, and we're having a really good time. So yeah, I hope you're having a wonderful day, whatever it is you're up to, and I shall speak to you all very soon.